Welcome back to another episode of Weird Disney Cars Diecast Errors and Inconsistencies. Today we will be going over even more cars from the Diecast line that have mistakes, some of which are scarily bad. So buckle in, it's going to be a very bumpy ride. I hope you don't get too scared. Okay, enough with this stupid voice. Hi, welcome back to another Errors and Inconsistencies. It's Halloween. Let's just get started. From 2018 to 2020, there was a Cars series every year called the Scavenger Hunt line. This special series released random cars from that year in new metallic forms, and it was pretty cool. It gave way to a lot of really obscure Cars characters getting metallic variants, because again, they would basically just pick random characters out that year and make metallic variants of them. Honestly, it's something that I kind of miss, even if in hindsight it does seem like sort of an odd concept. As we're used to with metallic Cars diecasts, all of them just looked identical to their regular releases, now with a metallic finish. With one exception. Metallic Hall In-Gas, released in 2020, actually has a different expression from his normal release, because he doesn't have his lower eyelids added on, which was an interesting choice. I don't know if it was a mistake or what, but this makes Hall notable as the only release in the Scavenger Hunt series to have a different expression from his original release. On the subject of metallic cars from the last few years, let's talk about the Pixar Fest line real quick. I really enjoyed this line. It was a very fun cross-promotion, putting Pixar logos on different Cars characters. There were 7 releases total, 3 in 2020 and 4 in 2021. Technically there are 8 cars because Luigi and Guido, but they count as one release. And something that made these cars extra special was not just the Pixar logos, but the fact that all of them were metallic. Except for one. The Pixar Fest 2021 Ramon, for some reason, isn't metallic. This Ramon variant stands out for being the first and only variant of Ramon to be painted white. But he also stands out for being the only car in the series that isn't metallic for some reason. There's never been a car painted metallic white before. I don't even know how you'd be able to pull that off. I really don't know. Like, it probably would not be easy, and I assume that's why he ended up not being metallic. I would imagine they planned to make him metallic originally. If you look at the back of the box of the Pixar Fest cars, you can see the prototype image, the early render of this Ramon does appear to be metallic, but I guess they just couldn't get a metallic white car to work, which is a shame. As cool as it is to see a Ramon painted in all white, I would rather have had him be a different color that could have been made metallic, instead of making him the only Pixar Fest car to not be metallic. Or alternatively, they could have replaced him with a different character, since we already had a Pixar Fest Ramon back in 2020. Back in the day, whenever a multi-pack came out with a new release in it, it would always be labeled as an exclusive vehicle, which was true. It was a new release exclusive to that pack. But as time went on, many of the characters once labeled as exclusive ended up finding their way into regular singles and regular releases. This, of course, would mean that the diecast is no longer exclusive to just that pack. So, starting in 2016, instead of labeling new releases as exclusive, just in case Mattel wanted to release them again, they began to label new releases and packs as first looks. This started, I believe, with the Carnival Racers line in 2016 with Raul Cerul, and then continued into 2017 for Cars 3, where any new release in a multi-pack was always labeled as first look. And over the years, almost every first look from those Cars 3 multi-packs has been released in another form. Nowadays, we don't really get new releases in multi-packs anymore, and when we do, they don't even label them as such. But I think that in the end, the first look concept was a much better way of doing things than labeling everything as exclusive. It just made it all seem a lot more fair. You know, you say first look, then you're saying, hey, look, this is the first time we're making this. Oh, we may make it again. Although, ironically, the Carnival Racers Raul Cerul, who was the first ever first look, was never re-released. For whatever reason, Mattel thought it would be a good idea to make the tires on every single Salt Flats car from Cars on the Road be completely white, to make it look as if they were covered in salt from the Salt Flats. while Mattel has done things like this in the past with the beach racers and the ice racers, both of those times it was done in a far more realistic way where it looked a whole lot more like sand or snow was on the wheels. Here, nah. They just colored the tires entirely white and called it a day, and it just doesn't look too good in my opinion. It just is kind of distracting on a lot of these cars, I feel, and also it's just not accurate. That's just not what they look like. Do they have some salt on them on the show? Yeah, but it's not nearly as much. You could have just painted the bottoms. You didn't have to paint the sides of the tires too. It just doesn't look right, and it doesn't look like salt. It just looks like they have white tires. Because that's exactly what they have. And ironically, the artwork for most of these characters doesn't even have a speckle of salt on them. They also didn't make this choice with the color changers, so why do it with the regular diecasts? During my review of the 2022 re-release of Zen Master, I noticed something odd. My Zen Master was missing his wheel coverings. His back wheels should have a little additional piece coming out covering them, just like his original diecast had and just like he had in the movie. But for some reason, my copy of his 2022 re-release was missing them. You could even see the area where they're supposed to be attached. I checked eBay to see if mine was an isolated incident, and, well, it wasn't, as a lot of the listings for 2022 Zen Master are also missing their wheel covering. But the weird thing is, some of them do have the wheel covering. So yeah, just be wary. Some of the releases don't have the accurate wheel covering, and some do. I don't know why this happened. I don't know how this happened. Obviously, it was a production mistake, as some of them were released with it and some without it. Hopefully, we can get some more information on this situation as time goes on. Now, I'd totally recommend picking up this 2-pack with Mike Fuse and Zen Master. This year's re-release of Zen Master is great and is a lot more movie accurate than previous releases with his expression. But unfortunately, there's a chance that yours may not have the wheel covering, so look out for that when you're in the store. Now I'd like to dedicate a few segments of this episode to go over some things on the 2022 Cars Diecast poster. We've finally received our poster for 2022 now that the year has concluded, probably because they didn't want to spoil anything on the road by releasing it earlier on in the year. And I can gladly say that Ramon Green on the poster has had his name fixed to Artist Ramon. Thank you, Mattel. Thank you. We couldn't have done it without you because you're the toy company and it was your mistake and it's all your fault. And wait a minute, they labeled him as a Cars 1 release on the poster. We all know he was from Cars 2, and even his diecast said as seen in Cars 2, and also Otis is labeled as a Cars 1 release. What is going on here? It can never just be easy, right? It can never just be correct. They always have to somehow fix one problem and cause two more. It's like a Hydra. You cut off one head and two more will take its place. Now, I'm sure that there are plenty of other errors on the 2022 poster in addition to the one that I just mentioned, or ones, because I talked about 2 cars. But for this episode, I'm just going to talk about one more. The other one that the most people contacted me about. I got a lot of people talking to me about Artist Ramon. I also got quite a few people bringing up the fact that the Chick Hicks and Bruiser Bukowski 2-pack on the 2022 poster doesn't feature Bruiser and instead features the Chick Hicks Wide Pity. Of course, in classic Mattel fashion, on the checklist poster they released at the end of the year after everything had already been out, about 6 months after this 2-pack came out, they got an image of the Chick Hicks Wide Pity, who was only ever released in a few multi-packs 13 years ago, instead of Bruiser Bukowski, who is far more common and has always been the one packed in 2-packs with Chick. It's kind of impressive, some of these mistakes. Honestly, like, it's pretty impressive that they fished out a picture of the Wide Pity for no reason, because it was a mistake. But this isn't actually the first time that they got Bruiser confused with the Chick Hicks Wide Pity. Bruiser Bukowski was first released in the Walmart 8 collection, a collection of 8 cars that were exclusive, you guessed it, to Toys R Us. I'm just kidding, they were exclusive to Walmart. I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention. Bruiser Bukowski And all the other cars in this line used screenshots showing where they appeared in the movie. This is something that would later be adopted for 2-packs, but as far as singles go, this is the only time they ever did screenshots for singles. Bruiser's screenshot, if you couldn't already tell, isn't of Bruiser, it's of the Wide Pity, because of course it is. So this error of Bruiser being confused with the Wide Pity, who doesn't even have a name, can be traced all the way back to his first release in 2007. This issue was technically corrected in 2009 when Bruiser was re-released in a 2-pack, and the screenshot used was just an expanded version of the screenshot they were using before, but now it includes Bruiser, who you can see all the way off to the right. He, of course, is the Tall Pity. Now, honestly, I think this is what happened with Bruiser. Nowadays, we know the 3 Pity diecast molds of tall, short, and wide. But Bruiser Bukowski was the first ever piston cut Pity. He was the tall model, and he was made a few years before the wide or short models even existed. So honestly, I think they decided, hey, we're going to make a Chick Hicks Pity, and they just selected a screenshot of a random Chick Hicks Pity. Now we know that the Wide Pity isn't Bruiser, Bruiser is the Tall Pity, but originally, I think they just, took a random screenshot of one of the Chick Hicks Pities because this was before they defined that they would be using several different molds for the different kinds of Pities. For years, there was a debate regarding how to pronounce the name of this Piston Cup sponsor. Is it Spearmint or Spare Omen? Is the tire in the logo representing the letter O or not? When the racer for this sponsor, Ernie Gearson, was first released back in 2008, Mattel labeled him as Spearmint. But then in 2009, they changed their tune, beginning to label him as Spare Omen, something they continued in every release up to his most recent one in 2014. In Cars 3, we once again saw Ernie Gearson, who underwent some insane plastic surgery since the last time we saw him. In Cars 3, the Spearmint logo now has 2 tires instead of 1. One next to the word Spare and one next to the word Mint. And the next-gen Spearmint racer, Nick Shift, doesn't have the O on him at all. So it seems that by the time they got to Cars 3, they decided that the tire wasn't meant to be the letter O and was instead just a stylistic choice. Was this always the intention, even back in the first movie, and Mattel just messed up when they started calling it Sparrow Mint? I don't know, and I don't think we'll ever know, and we may never have a definitive answer on if the sponsor is called Spearmint or Spare Omen in the first movie, because they've been using the real names for racers instead of their sponsor names since, like, 2016. But personally, I prefer the Spearmint name over Spare Omen, since Spearmint sounds closer to what it's a parody of, the real-world gum brand Spearmint. Now let's end today's episode by getting into the spirit of the season by talking about an error with a Cars Halloween costume. Now, of course, no Cars Halloween costume is 100% accurate on account that people in real life aren't giant, living, talking cars. So they always take some fun, creative liberties. Oftentimes, they try to have the costume look like what a race car driver for that racer would look like if it were in real life, such as this one, which I talked about a few years back in an episode of Weird Products. This costume is just meant to make you look like you're Lightning McQueen if you were a real person, and then it also has an image of Lightning McQueen on the torso in case somebody can't put the pieces together and realize who you're dressed up as. Anyway, it has a bunch of little Lightning McQueen details, his signature on the belt, you've got the 95s all over, and of course, as you could tell from the image of McQueen, this is based off of Cars 3. It also has his secondary sponsors written on the jacket. We have Vitaline, Revolting, Clutch Aid, Octane Gain, RPM, and Nitro Aid. And this is where our error lies, as if you look at Lightning's actual Cars 3 design, he has Octane Gain, RPM, Revolting, and Clutch Aid. Vitaline and Nitro Aid are not on Lightning's Cars 3 design. Even if you wanted to make the argument that, oh, it's just based off of Cars 1 McQueen instead, they used the wrong image. Well, that design doesn't have Vitaline as a secondary sponsor. So, what happened here? Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, and it's a super big nitpick, but it's something I thought was kind of funny. Something I sort of came up with on a whim. I wanted to end this episode with a Halloween-themed item, and I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if one of the costumes put the, wrong secondary sponsors on McQueen? And lo and behold, the first costume I looked at did exactly that. It's like I've developed some sort of additional sense for Cars toy errors. Thus concludes this episode of Errors and Inconsistencies. Thank you for... Nah, I'm not doing the voice again, sorry. I thought it'd be cool if I, brought it back for the very end, but nah, just forget about it. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this episode of Weird Disney Cars Diecast Errors and Inconsistencies, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.